There's an Oklahoma state senator. His name is David Bullard, and he's one of those Christian nationalists who thinks his entire purpose in the legislature is to force his religion on everyone else in Oklahoma. So he's a guy who's already filed a bill I've talked about to put up 10 Commandments monuments inside and outside the state capitol, even though none of that is legal. But the thing I wanted to talk about is his latest attempt to push mythology on children under the guise of history. Um, is trying to do this Ten Commandments thing. He's talking about a bill, um, talking about, you know how Ryan Walters in Oklahoma tried to get Bibles in public schools, and then he purchased like 500 Trump Bibles for AP, was it economics teachers to use in the classroom or something? Well, this dude is saying it is wonderful that we are trying to shove Bibles into the classroom. But he added, we have to be careful about that, though, because it is possible that even if we succeed in Oklahoma at getting the Bible into schools, we might have some atheist teaching those classes, and this could backfire on us. This is something he actually said in an interview. And let me give you some background on this interview thing. This week, he appeared on the Wall Builders show, which is a show hosted by David Barton, a notorious Christian liar whose whole shtick is, I know what the founding fathers were thinking, and it turns out they all agreed with me about Christianity. And then he takes quotations out of context to suggest that the founders totally created this country on a Christian foundation, and it's all a lie. And historians who actually understand what they're doing point out why it's a lie. There's a wonderful podcast by Warren Throckmorton about the Jefferson lies that David Barton spews. But this dude, Bullard, David Bullard, he appeared on David Barton's show, and he was praising Ryan Walters. And he was saying Walters has done a lot, but he's limited in what he can do because Ryan Walters can create new rules, but superintendents can just ignore them if they want. And so Bullard was saying that's why the legislature, which he's part of, has to codify laws about how we teach the Bible in school. Because Ryan Walters can say this stuff, but we can make it a law so that teachers actually have to do it. And at one point, he brought up the example of the Bibles, because Ryan Walters has put out memos saying everyone has to teach the Bible in school. And a whole bunch of superintendents across the state have said, we don't give a shit what Ryan Walters says. We have local control over our school district, and we're going to stick to, teaching kids. Thank you very much. So Bullard was saying, you have these superintendents defying what Ryan Walters says. And even worse than all that, what if they allow teachers who are not Bible-believing Christians to teach those Bibles? Let me play for you what he said about all this.
Since I have been in, I have fought to force our teachers to actually use primary sources to teach our Christian heritage and its impact on our founding documents. And he's been fighting that fight through his implementation of the Bible in schools. And I think that there's a lot of benefit to looking at that. We need to be specific there. I don't want some pink-haired person who doesn't believe in God to start trying to teach the Bible. So I want to make sure we're teaching it specifically. I've run that bill this year. That's Senate Bill 850. And that one actually gives them, I think it's 20 different quotes from the founding fathers on our Christian and constitutional heritage. And it would require that to be taught in every history class.
I'll come back to that 20 quotation thing in just a second, but what he said there is we need to be specific. I don't want some pink-haired person who doesn't believe in God to start trying to teach the Bible. And he's giving away the game right there, right? Because this whole time, Ryan Walters has said we got to get the Bible in school. From a teaching perspective, from a secular thing, it's all about teaching history. That's why we got to get the Bible in school, so kids have a primary document to learn history. And then this idiot, David Bullard, is like, well, that's not really what this is about, because what if an atheist is teaching it? Then kids won't get indoctrinated. Like, he's accidentally giving away the thing all of us have been saying all along about what Ryan Walters is trying to do. Because if they were actually teaching history, using the Bible, why would it matter if an atheist is teaching the Bible? He's only upset because he's like, what if someone takes something out of context and tells kids something they're not supposed to hear? Because really, their goal is to indoctrinate children. And the other thing Bullard pointed out, I mean, he could just as easily have said he just doesn't want Muslims or Jews teaching the Bible. And of course, that would have been seen as offensive. But instead, he's like, I don't want some pink haired atheist doing it, because he knows no one's going to stand up for atheists. He wants the Bible taught his way in whatever manner makes the Bible look good, context be damned. He wants public schools turned into Sunday schools. He wants kids listening to sermons and not thinking critically about text that is in front of them. And more importantly, he wants certain parts of the Bible taught by Christians like him, because the possibility of kids encountering the Bible through a different lens, that would be a death sentence for his preferred form of indoctrination. So speaking of that, the bill he was talking about is Senate Bill 850. And that bill, which is now in the Education Committee, it would force social studies teachers to teach the original intent of the founding fathers while constructing the U.S. Constitution. And to that end, let me show you part of this bill here. He actually points out, like, what are we going to do? This bill shall adopt a social studies core curriculum, blah, blah, blah. The United, what are we talking about here? Okay, what does the social studies curriculum need to include? It shall include information about Juneteenth, commemorating emancipation of enslaved African Americans. Good job, Oklahoma, site of the Tulsa Race Massacre. I'm glad you got that one in there. But look at number 2. This is the new addition that he wants to add. We have to teach kids about the original intent of the founding fathers while constructing the Constitution. Teachers shall include primary sources from the founding era and throughout U.S. history, and specific quotes from the founding fathers about the U.S.'s Christian heritage, including the influence of the Ten Commandments and the Bible on the U.S.'s founding documents, if presented objectively as part of a secular program of education. And then he lists a whole bunch of quotations that he says you got to teach students these quotations specifically while you are teaching them about U.S. history. And this is supposed to reflect what the founding fathers were thinking. But the thing is, if you go through these quotations and who said them, a lot of them are from people who had nothing to do with the Constitution. All right? Like, if the goal is to teach the original intent of the founding fathers when they wrote the Constitution, you would never cite any of these quotations, since a bunch of them were written long after the Constitution was adopted, and none of their thoughts were incorporated into the final document. Like, there's a reason when you go through this bill, none of these quotations give you a citation, and none of them give you a year when they were said. Because I think if he gave you the place they were written, the year they were said, people would realize, wait a minute, this had nothing to do with the Constitution. So he just lied and omitted them, right? So this dude is not interested in honesty or history. His joy as a Republican comes from lying to children. And now he wants to force teachers to do that on his behalf by shoving a series of random quotations from random men into the classroom, knowing full well teachers will not be given the resources to provide proper context, or won't have the background to understand why all of this is bullshit. Like, teachers do not want politicians micromanaging their classrooms, but it's so much worse when Republicans are trying to infest their classrooms with this kind of bullshit. Oklahoma, by the way, is also one of the worst states in the country when it comes to education, and this dude will not rest until it is the absolute worst. And his biggest problem is not that the Bible, like that Ryan Walters has tried to get the Bible into public schools. His concern is, oh no, what if the teacher happens to be a pink-haired atheist? Then she might not teach the Bible the way I wish the kids were taught the Bible, which obviously implies indoctrination. So This one could become a law. I don't know. We will see. It's Oklahoma. You can't expect them to do the right thing when the Bible is standing in their way. So I think I'm done for now. What questions we got here about this story? What state is this now? Oklahoma. Wall builders. Why not bridge builders? I don't know the origin of why David Barton calls his group wall builders. Like, that could easily be the name of a church state separation group. Like, we got to build a wall between church and state. David Barton wants to tear that wall down. So I'm not sure why it's called wall builders, to be honest. I guess he's not a fan of Kat Kerr. Why are we talking about Kat Kerr? Is the self-proclaimed prophet who just makes up prophecies and says she's gone to heaven, who also, I guess, has colored hair, like dyed pink, purple hair. And honestly, I don't want her teaching kids about the Bible either. So you know what? Point to him for that one. If you want to put your Bible in the schools, then we get to put the IRS in your churches. Haha, joke's on you. Trump has dismantled the IRS. So no enforcement of any kind. Tax cheats can do whatever they want now. Let me guess. He got those quotes and sources from ChatGPT. I was trying to look up where he got them from. If there was like one list he was getting all that from, and I could not find like a list he was getting all that stuff from. But it looks like an amalgamation of stuff that David Barton has promoted in his lectures over the years. So I would not be surprised if David Barton just gave him that list and said, shove this in your law.